The old clock tower stood in the center of the town, a silent, looming monolith. It had not chimed for 53 years, since the day the townspeople vanished, leaving everything behind as if they had simply stepped through a door into another reality. No one knows where they went, no one remembers their names. The only reminder is the oppressive silence and the towering clock that looms over the empty streets, a monument to a forgotten tragedy. I heard the stories, of course, whispered legends of a town swallowed by time. My name is Thomas, and I am an archivist, and I came to understand, to excavate the truth from the ruins. I arrived on a Saturday, the 12th of October. The air was cold, biting, and a thick fog clung to the town, swirling around my legs, damp and heavy. It muffled the sounds and blurred the edges of the buildings, making everything seem distorted and unreal. I parked my car outside the town limits, the sound of the door closing strangely loud in the oppressive silence. It was a weighty thing, this silence, pressing down on me like a physical force, punctuated only by the crunch of my footsteps on the gravel. I walked into the town, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The streets were deserted, the buildings eerily silent, the doors open like empty mouths, shops with shelves still stocked, and tables laid out. But no people, no life, just a silent tableau, a picture of a world frozen in time. I moved slowly, taking notes in my small book, the scratch of my pen the only sound besides my breath and the heavy thud of my heart, and the faint tick, tick, tick in the distance like something was watching me. I found the town hall, a large building with a tall front door. It was unlocked, of course, like all the doors in the town, a silent invitation to enter, or perhaps a warning. I pushed it open, the door groaning with a sound like old bones, and stepped inside, the metallic taste clinging to the air. The interior was dark, damp, and thick with dust. The air was stale, and thick with the smell of old paper and something else, something sweet and cloying, like rotten fruit and decaying flowers, a scent that made my stomach churn. I looked around, my eyes adjusting to the dimness. There was a large desk in the center of the room, surrounded by bookshelves filled with old records. I spent hours going through the records, searching for any clue about the disappearances. The records spoke of the clock tower, how it was more than just a building, it was the center of everything. They spoke of a change, a shift that had come over the town, a transformation that they welcomed. They spoke of a new way of thinking, a new way of seeing, a light that was not from the sun. The words were strange, almost poetic, like they were trying to describe something beyond human comprehension, something beautiful and terrifying at the same time. I found a diary. It was small and bound in cracked leather. The last entry was dated a Wednesday, the 1st of November, 53 years ago. The handwriting was shaky, as if written by a feverish hand. The writer spoke of the new light, a light that emanated from the clock. It is not from the sun, but from the clock, they wrote, we are becoming one, we are becoming part of something bigger, something more than we ever were. The following pages had been violently ripped out, the edges jagged and torn. I closed the diary, my hand trembling, a cold dread washing over me. The smell was stronger now, the sweet stench of decay clinging to my clothes, my skin, and my vision blurred. I felt the prickling sensation of being watched, and the faint ticking was getting louder, closer, as if it were inside my own head. I left the town hall, my mind a whirlwind of questions, a knot of unease growing in my stomach. I had to see the clock tower, I had to understand. The clock tower was even more imposing up close, a dark, brooding presence that loomed over the town. Its stone was cold and rough, almost slimy to the touch. Its clock face was empty, a gaping black void. There were no hands. I walked around the tower, the fog swirling at my feet, the silence like a pressure against my eardrums. The door was old, swollen wood, with a rusty handle, and when I touched the handle, it felt warm, almost pulsing. I tried to open the door, but it was locked. I pushed, then pulled, then pushed again, putting all my strength into it, and with a groan that seemed to echo through the entire town, the door slowly creaked open. Inside, it was dark, damp, and smelled strongly of metal. The The fog had followed me in, clinging to the walls. I pulled out my flashlight, the beam cutting through the fog, revealing a winding staircase spiraling upwards into the darkness. I started to climb, each step groaning under my weight. The steps were narrow, uneven, and felt slick beneath my boots. The air grew colder and heavier with each step, the metallic smell becoming overwhelming. I could hear the wind whistling outside, a mournful sound that seemed to be mixed with a chorus of whispers. And the ticking was getting louder, a rhythmic pulse that seemed to vibrate in my bones. I reached the first landing. It was a small, circular room with no windows, only stone walls, and the air was so heavy, it was like breathing water. In the center of the room, there was a large gear, slowly turning, the only thing moving. It was made of brass, and it was spinning counterclockwise, pulling something invisible with it. The ticking was louder here, a rhythmic thump, like a heartbeat. I looked at the gear, and I felt a strange pull, as if something was trying to draw me in, to claim me. I turned away, my vision swimming, my heart racing. I kept climbing, my breath catching in my throat. The next landing was different. It was not circular, but square. The walls covered in mirrors, each one reflecting a distorted version of the same hallway, stretching out forever. I walked forward, and I saw myself over and over again, moving towards me, moving away from me. My reflections looked older, hollow, and in their eyes, I saw an unsettling, cold knowing. It felt like I was trapped in an endless maze, a loop of myself. I looked at one of the reflections, and I saw not my own face, but the face of the keeper, old, pale, and smiling with an unnatural glee. I stumbled back, my heart pounding, my breath shallow. I rubbed my eyes, but when I looked again, it was just my reflection, pale and distorted. I told myself it was the fog, the strange light playing tricks on me. My head throbbed. I turned away from the mirror and kept climbing, the ticking growing louder, the whispers following. The next landing was the same as the first, another circular room with a large gear in the center. But this time, the gear was spinning faster, and the walls seemed to pulse with each rotation. The ticking was even louder, a deafening roar, and the whispers were so strong now, I could almost make out words, but they were nonsense, jumbled sounds. I felt a stronger pull, the feeling of something trying to consume me, to erase me. I tried to resist, but my body felt heavy, my mind clouded. I felt dizzy, and the air grew hot and thick around me. I turned and kept climbing, my legs heavy, my vision swimming, the metallic smell thick in the air. I did not know how many landings there were, or how long I had been climbing. Time seemed to lose all meaning. My thoughts became fragmented, my memories uncertain. I felt a strange pull, like I was being drawn towards something, an irresistible urge to see the clock. The next landing was the clock room. It was large and open, with tall windows looking out over the town. But they were not glass. They were dark, like mirrors, reflecting a distorted version of the fog and a sky that was not there. In the center of the room, the clock mechanism dominated, a complex network of gears and springs, all moving, spinning faster and faster, with the ticking so loud now, it felt like a heartbeat, a pulse that vibrated in my bones. And the hands on the clock, they were not thin and sharp. They were thick and blunt, covered in a dark, sticky liquid, and they moved with a slow, deliberate menace. I looked at the clock face, and I saw not numbers but faces, the faces of the townspeople, old and distorted, their eyes all staring at me, their smiles wide and unnatural. They were whispering, a chorus of voices repeating my name, again and again. And in the background, I could hear the soft sound of a clock, ticking. I felt a powerful pull, a force drawing me towards the clock. The room seemed to be spinning around me, the walls closing in, the air growing thick. The hands of the clock were moving faster, and I felt the ticking in my body, a vibration that spread through my bones. It was like I was being pulled apart, myself dissolving, merging with something larger. I looked into the dark windows, and I saw myself reflected back. But it was not my face, not anymore. It was the face of the clock, the faces of the townspeople, and we were all one, all connected, all bound to the ticking mechanism, all staring back with hollow eyes and unnatural smiles. A strange peace washed over me. I was becoming one. I was becoming part of the clock, part of the silence. The last thing I heard was the ticking, the whispering, and the grinding of the gears. The last thing I saw was the clock face, expanding, consuming me, swallowing me into its endless void. The story ends there, or perhaps it never does. The clock tower still stands in the center of the town. The town is still empty and silent. The fog still lingers, and the clock is still ticking, waiting. What happened to Thomas? Where did the townspeople go? Are they part of the clock? Or are they something else entirely? Maybe you will find out. But be warned, the clock is always watching, always listening, always ticking. And it is always waiting for the next one to climb the stairs.